At the beginning, the scene showed a classroom where a boy was sitting on his seat while reading a book, thinking that he liked this seat because he could quietly read his light novels alone. He noticed that the extroverts were as loud as ever, hanging out again that day, and thought that if he had to hang out with people like them, he would rather remain a loner introvert. He felt that his seat was the best that day too. His name was Ryota Izumiya, and he thought that being surrounded 2 or even 3 layers deep by the rest of the class made this corner seat truly a god-tier seat. He resolved that he had to savor every single second of it. Suddenly, someone called out for everyone's attention, saying they were doing seat changes that day. Ryota was stunned and seemed panicked, thinking, "Wah," with a panicked face. The girls in front of him said to each other that it was the first time that year, and another girl mentioned that she had heard the class representative, Kuroki, had asked the teacher. Ryota thought angrily, wondering why Kuroki had to mess things up, thinking that for a loner like him, seat changes were nothing but high risk with no reward. With an angry face, a girl announced that she had posted the new seating chart and told everyone to go take a look. A girl bumped into Ryota, saying she was next to Suzuki and woohooing before apologizing. Ryota, stunned, went to see the board and wondered where his seat was. He said in shock that his seat was in the center, thinking maybe he was surrounded by fellow introverts too. He was stunned to see that he was sitting in the middle of 3 names and wondered why someone like him, an introvert, of all people, had ended up there. He clenched his teeth, thinking that being surrounded by 3 S-tier beautiful girls was, no matter how he looked at it, the worst seat possible. With a scared face, he overheard 2 boys saying they were jealous, with one saying he would love to get close to those 3 girls. Ryota thought that they were the center of the class, the undisputed cast top, and all he wanted was to sit quietly in a corner and enjoy his light novels. But to him, this was nothing short of hell. That said, he noticed the girl next to him, whom he had never seen before. At that moment, a girl said something, and Ryota thought that the embodiment of cute, airy Miyama was so sly and wondered why someone like her was sitting in front of him, thinking this was the worst. Airi complimented another girl's nails, saying they were so pretty, to which the other girl replied that she didn't do anything special but thanked her. Ryota thought that the downer-type gyaru, Yuria Ichinose, was intimidating, and he feared they would get the wrong idea about him. Sure, he liked big boobs and curvy bodies, but in real life, gyarus were intimidating. Yuria remarked that their seats were pretty close, and Airi agreed, wondering if Rui-chan arranged it so they would be near each other. Airi called out to Rui-chan, and Ryota thought that Rui Kuroki was the mastermind behind the seat change. Rui then greeted Ryota, saying it had been a long time and that they were neighbors starting that day, introducing herself politely. Ryota, with a scared face, replied nervously, greeting her back. Rui smiled, and Airi seemed confused, while Yuria noted that the teacher was coming. The teacher said that the seat change was finished but warned them not to get too excited since it was only allowed because the class rep, Kuroki, insisted on it. The teacher added that seat changes were pointless and that they did not plan on allowing another one. Ryota, with a tense face, thought in shock whether he was really stuck with that seat until the end of the 2nd year. The teacher concluded homeroom. Ari asked Ri-chan if she knew Ryota, to which Ri replied that they were in the same class back in middle school. Ari reacted with a small, heh. Ryota, while reading his book, wondered if Kuroki even remembered him and felt annoyed that he was curious about it. He told himself to calm down and decided to read his light novel. Suddenly, Airi exclaimed that it was a dirty picture book, which stunned and scared Ryota, who told her to shut up. Yuria stared at Ryota, making him think that she was totally judging him. Yuria then changed the topic, saying she was going out to buy sushi that day and asking the others about their plans. Ryota thought, with a smile, that it was a girl talk and felt thankful that the teasing was over. Rui mentioned she was free, since track and field had the day off, and asked Airi about her plans. Airi, with a tense face, apologized, saying she would pass that day because her boyfriend wanted to go to Starbucks after school. Yuria accepted it, saying it couldn't be helped, and Airi apologized again. Ryota thought how enviable it was, realizing that a bottom feeder like him had nothing to do with that. Later, Ryota was seen walking on the streets, thinking about what a day it had been and how the jealous stares from other guys were painful. He saw a boy and girl walking together, with the girl complaining the boy was pervy, and Ryota, annoyed, thought, damn normies. However, he told himself that he had his beloved world of manga and light novels, and that day was the release day of the LN he wanted. At the bookstore, he saw that his novel was out of stock. The staff apologized, saying it was currently out of stock. Ryota, in a soulless state, replied that he understood, thinking it was to be expected since it was his favorite web novel, Oppai Sway, or Boob Sucker, and that it couldn't be helped as it was a hot title. He called another bookstore, introducing himself and asking if they had that light novel in stock, feeling embarrassed, saying its name out loud. The girl on the line sounded unusually cheerful and familiar to him, and he wondered if he was imagining things. She confirmed they had 4 copies left. Ryouta thanked her, saying he would head over right away, and she replied enthusiastically. Ryouta was stunned, thinking they should hang up after a customer call, and wondered if it was a new part-timer. When he reached the store, he told the staff that he was the one who called earlier. The girl, while carrying books, confirmed about the book but then noticed him, stunned, saying it was the boy who sat beside her. It turned out to be Airi, who was blushing and seemed tense. Ryouta was also tense and decided to pretend he didn't see anything, turning to leave. Suddenly, Airi called him and grabbed his shoulder, asking if he planned to tell everyone that she had a part-time job. Ryouta was confused, and Airi explained that she had gotten the school's permission and was working within allowed hours, and tearfully begged him not to tell anyone. Another girl interrupted, telling them that lovers' quarrels were against the rules during shifts, making Airi blush, and Ryouta thought that at least she should correct her, as he wasn't her boyfriend. The girl told Airi to take a break in the break room, and Airi wiped her tears, saying okay. In the staff room, Airi apologized, saying it was her fault. Ryouta replied that he was sorry too, thinking with a blushing face that it was too close, and that a loner like him couldn't handle being alone at such a distance with a girl. Airi tearfully confessed that she was scared of being called poor again like back then. Ryouta, with a tense face, asked what she meant by poor. In tears, Airi explained that her family was really poor. Her dad had passed away when she was little, and her mom raised her alone. She didn't get any allowance and had many tough times. Ryouta thought she had it rough, more than he expected. Airi continued, saying that back in middle school, when her friends started wearing makeup, she was the only one who couldn't keep up, making her feel left out and miserable. She worked hard to save money and studied fashion and makeup until she could become the cute version of herself. But to keep up that cute version, she had to face the reality that it cost money. Ryouta asked if that was why she got a job, and Airi confirmed it. Ryouta thought that getting a part-time job didn't automatically mean she was poor. Airi added that it didn't bother her if people called her poor anymore, as she had gotten used to it, but she absolutely didn't want Yuria or Rui, who became her friends back in first year, to find out. That was why, with tears in her eyes and leaning close to Ryouta, she pleaded with him. Ryouta, blushing, told her honestly that he really respected her. Airi was stunned, and Ryouta explained that he had never even bought anything with money he earned himself, so compared to him, she was way more mature. He added that he could never look down on someone like her and absolutely wouldn't. Ryouta thought to himself what the heck he was saying and turned to see Airi smiling with a blush while wiping her tears, saying that he was actually pretty sweet. She giggled softly while smiling, and Ryouta, blushing, asked what she meant. Airi got up, saying she should get back to work. Ryouta asked in surprise, and Airi reminded him that he came there to buy that boob whatever book. Ryouta was later shown kneeling, thinking he should have been able to buy it, but his oppai sway was gone. Suddenly, Airi came close to his ear, asking if he found the book he was looking for. Ryouta, shocked and blushing, replied that it was sold out. Airi laughed, and Ryouta smiled while thinking that was why he couldn't deal with extroverts. Airi then slid a book to him, and Ryouta, stunned, saw that it was oppai sway. Airi asked if he wanted it, saying that when he called, she set a copy aside for him, while smiling. Ryouta was stunned and blushing, thinking that Airi was seriously an angel. Airi then asked what her thank you was for reserving it, making Ryouta bow and thank her very much. Airi repeated her question, and Ryouta was stunned, asking, "Huh?" Airi explained that she set it aside out of a customer service spirit, so in return, he should treat her to something, as that was the deal. Ryouta, shocked, listened as Airi said that now that he had seen her true nature, she might as well say that she was a pretty straightforward girl. She wrapped her hand around his arm, telling him to treat her to something at the cafeteria the next day. Ryouta, blushing, thought that she was definitely not an angel but a little devil. Airi then asked his name, and he told her it was Izumiya Ryouta. Airi replied, calling him Ryota, and said she would be looking forward to lunch break the next day, smiling and blushing. Ryouta was stunned and blushed as Airi smiled slyly. Someone called Airi to the register, and she replied that she was coming, leaving while saying, "See ya." Ryouta, with a tense face, thought in shock that having lunch with Airi Miyama, one of the queens of the school caste hierarchy, was totally insane no matter how he looked at it. Ryota Izumiya was sitting at his desk in the classroom, thinking that after the seat change, he ended up surrounded by beautiful girls, which sucked for him. Somebody from behind said they were jealous of Izumiya's seat, wondering why that otaku got such a spot when he was only into 2D stuff. With a tense face, Ryota told himself to just focus on his light novel. Then he noticed legs in front of his desk and thought, Looking up, he saw Yuria Ichinose staring at him. He wondered in shock why the gloomy gal Ichinose Yuria was looking at him. Then she said she remembered something. With a scared expression, Ryota wondered what that was supposed to mean, and replied with a confused, "Huh?" Yuria then greeted Eri with a, "Morning," and Eri replied back. Eri looked at Ryota and winked, causing him to blush and think that it made them look like they were secretly dating. Yuria asked Eri why she winked, and Eri said it was for no reason. Ryota, shaking, put his head down on his desk, wondering what that wink actually meant. Later, Eri suggested they eat, and Ryota replied, "Thanks for the food." Eri said it was tasty while eating, and thanked him for treating her, apologizing for picking something kind of expensive. Ryota said it was fine, as it was to thank her for yesterday. Eri then asked if he noticed people staring at them. The classmates were whispering among themselves, jealous that the two of them were eating together. Ryota thought he couldn't blame them. While eating, Eri asked Ryota if he was talking with Yuria that morning, mentioning that it was rare to see Yuria talking with a guy. Ryota replied that Yuria had said, "I remembered it." Eri asked what she meant by that, but Ryota said that's what he wanted to know too, feeling like it was a pretty high bar for him to ask. Eri suggested that she could ask Yuria for him, but Ryota declined, saying it wouldn't be fun that way. With a smile, Eri offered to tell him Yuria's secret hangout so he could ask her directly, calling it Operation Get Close to Yuria. Ryota was stunned and asked what she meant, but Eri told him she thought Yuria wanted to be friends, and since their seats were close together, they should all try to get along. Blushing, Ryota suggested that maybe Eri should act as the mediator instead, but Eri refused, saying it would be boring that way. Ryota thought to himself that she was a little devil. Later, Ryota was standing in front of a building, thinking that this was Ichinose's secret spot. He guessed if she was a gal, maybe it would be the photo booth area. Tilting his head, he noted she wasn't there, but then he heard some clacking sounds. Turning around with a tense face, he saw a girl at the arcade claw machine, thinking about her nails as she pressed buttons. The girl was saying, "Milk tan," and Ryota noticed her chest and her thighs and realized it was Ichinose Yuria. She was frustrated that it wasn't going well, and Ryota thought she was really struggling with it. With a tense face, he wondered if a gal like her was going after an erotic bishoujo anime figure for resale. Blushing, he thought, "No way, resale." Suddenly, Yuria turned around, and both of them said, "Ah," in surprise. Blushing, Yuria accused him of trying to get dirt on her and expose her for going after a figure, asking if he planned to ruin her. Ryota frantically denied it, saying he actually came there to win that figure himself. She was surprised and asked if he was really trying to win it too, covering her mouth with her hand. Ryota asked why she was trying to get that figure and whether she was planning to give it to someone. Blushing, she stayed silent, so Ryota asked if she was planning to resell it. Angrily, she grabbed his collar and told him not to lump her in with sleazebags, shouting that she was trying to win it herself so she wouldn't have to buy it from resellers. Ryota thought, crap, realizing that resale might have been a trigger word for her. Yuria, frustrated, asked if he was even listening. Ryota dropped a coin into the machine and told her to let go of his hands so he could focus. Blushing, she asked what he was doing. He told her he had trained solely to win bishoujo figures, thinking claw machines were meant to be won with a gentle touch. Dropping another coin, he declared that with this, he won the figure. Yuria blushed, calling him amazing and seriously praising him. Smiling, Ryota handed her the figure, and Yuria was surprised, asking if he was sure since he was the one who won it. Ryota said he was only able to win it because she had worked so hard on the machine and that it belonged to her. She was stunned and asked if he wasn't going to make fun of her for being a high school girl into erotic anime, saying no matter how you looked at it, it was weird. Ryota admitted he was surprised she liked an erotic anime where breast milk shoots out, making her flinch. But he continued saying he didn't think there was anything wrong with proudly loving what you love. He explained he didn't even use a cover for his light novels anymore because he wasn't ashamed of what he loved, saying that's what it meant to be an otaku. He added that while there was nothing wrong with hiding your hobbies, if you love something, you shouldn't put it down yourself. Yuria was stunned by his words. Ryota thought to himself, what the hell am I saying? I'm bottom of the barrel. He then suggested they both forget everything that happened that day, but Yuria refused, saying she didn't want to because she was an otaku too. Ryouta was shocked and asked if she was really an otaku. Yuria explained she wasn't trying to hide it, but it was hard to be open about it in front of Eri and Rui. Thinking about Rui and Eri, Ryouta listened as Yuria explained that she was tired of losing close friends over her hobby, so she kept it hidden. She then stared at some girls, and Ryouta apologized, thinking maybe he had asked something out of line. Yuria confirmed his name was Izumiya, and Ryouta replied yes, thinking she didn't remember it. She came closer, put her hand on his shoulder, and told him not to tell anyone she was an otaku, especially not Airi or Rui. Blushing, Ryouta promised he wouldn't tell anyone. Relieved, Yuria went to her bag and said that meant she didn't have to hide it from him. She took out a book and smiled, revealing that what she remembered that morning was actually the book's title, Opai, Sui. She asked for his line, deciding that he would be her partner for otaku talk from now on. Ryouta protested that it was too sudden, but Yuria threatened that if he didn't go along with her, she would tell everyone he had been eyeing her thighs lewdly, exposing him to everyone. Blushing, Ryouta thought, she knows. Yuria laughed and said that from now on, that would be their relationship, smiling and blushing as Ryouta blushed in defeat. While walking out together, Yuria asked if Oppai Sui ran on the web too, since its follower count was insane. Ryouta confirmed it, thinking he ended up forming a slightly different relationship with Ichinose compared to Miyama, noting that she was one of the top-ranking gyarus in their class. That night at his house, Ryouta lay on his bed thinking about how surprising it was that Ichinose was an otaku. His phone beeped, and it was a message from Airi asking if he had asked Yuria about that morning. Ryouta thought he should cover up Ichinose's secret and replied vaguely. Airi messaged back, saying it was probably nothing big and to forget it, then added that since she told him about Yuria, she kind of wanted to drink the new frappe from Staba as thanks. Ryouta was shocked, thinking she got a taste with the katsu curry, and replied that if it was next week, it was okay. Then his phone beeped again with a message from Ichinose thanking him for today, and suggesting they watch a movie next time as thanks for the figure. Ryouta, scared, said there was no way he could go to that. Blushing, he thought about how he had a new frappe with Miyama and a movie with Ichinose, just the two of them, and how something like that happening in his gloomy life was unbelievable. He lay down thinking this was what they called a ryaju. Ryota concluded that it was all thanks to the seat change arranged by Kuroki Ruri, wondering if it was deliberate or just a coincidence. If it was intentional, he questioned why someone like him, a gloomy nobody, got placed in such a prime seat. Thinking back to how they went to the same middle school but never even talked, he thought there was no way someone like her would even notice a speck like him. Meanwhile, at Rui's house, she was looking at a photo of Ryota with a smile saying, hee hee. Ryo was yawning in class, feeling sleepy. He thought he had stayed up pretty late last night, chatting with Ichinose on Lime. As he dropped his umbrella in the stand, he thought about how she totally changed when it came to otaku talk. Suddenly, he heard someone say, ah, and turned his head to see Rui, who greeted him brightly, saying good morning and commenting that it was raining today. Ryo, startled, replied with an awkward, ah, yeah, and thought to himself whether Kuroki was always this chatty. Then Eri arrived, greeting Rui cheerfully, while Yuria also greeted Rui from behind Eri. Rui asked Yuria if she had felt lonely and called Eri to walk to school with her. Yuria blushed and called Rui an idiot, explaining that Airi's umbrella broke, so she had to share with her. Airi teased Yuria to just be honest already. As Yuria glanced at Ryo and blushed, Ryo thought he had better make sure no one found out about yesterday. Eri asked Yuria what was wrong, and Yuria tried to brush it off, saying it was nothing. She said she would go ahead, and Rui, smiling, said she saw. Eri asked Rui if something was wrong, but Rui told her it was nothing and suggested they get going too. Rui turned to Ryo and smiled, making Ryo nervous. Later, Ryo sat at his seat with his head down, thinking in panic about Rui's smile that morning. He wondered if she had figured out what was going on between him and the two girls. He recalled Rui was a certified genius who dominated academics and sports, and that only Eri and Yuria could talk to her as equals. He feared that if she found out he knew her friends' secrets, she would interrogate him to protect them. He panicked, thinking she might have been probing him for info, and said to himself that he didn't get it. His phone beeped with a message from Eri, asking him to have lunch in the empty classroom on the third floor since Yuria and Rui were busy and she was alone. He responded with, Later in class 3 to 8, Eri called out to Ryo, asking what he and Rui had been talking about that morning. Ryo replied bluntly, asking if she thought he would just run his mouth about their secret. Eri denied that, saying what she wanted to know was why Rui was in such a good mood that morning. Ryo asked if she was in a good mood, and Airi explained that Rui always seemed deadpan when talking to boys, like she was looking down on them. But with Rio, she actually looked like she was having fun. She said Rui had been like that even on the day of the seat change. Airi sighed and declared that Rui totally liked Rio. Rio was shocked and questioned her logic, saying he and Rui had literally zero interaction before the seat change. Airi, blushing, smiled and said they went to the same middle school, so maybe Rui secretly fell for him back then. Rio thought, exasperated, about what this bomb-throwing girl was even saying. Airi suddenly smirked and said she got a great idea. Rio thought he had a bad feeling about it. Later, Rio was at the exit, thinking maybe he should just go straight home today. He wondered what the good thing Miyama mentioned was. As he looked for his umbrella, he realized it was missing. Someone from behind said, "Ah, you finally showed up," and Rio turned around, stunned, to see Rui holding his umbrella. Rui said she had been waiting for him. Rio asked if that was his umbrella, and Rui explained that Airi said she had a date and really needed an umbrella, so Rui lent her hers. Rui realized it was Rui who had lent it. Rui continued, saying this time it was, Rui-chan can't go home without it, implying Airi had asked him for help again. Rui apologized for dragging him into it. Rio understood the situation but wondered how she knew that umbrella was his. Rui asked if they should head out together since they were going the same way. Rio nervously agreed. Rui commented that he had been using this umbrella since middle school and opened it. Rio wondered how she even knew that. Rui remarked that the umbrella was pretty big, and Rio offered to hold it. Rui smiled sweetly and stepped under it, saying, "Excuse me for intruding," which made Rio blush hard. Rui suddenly asked if he had a girlfriend recently. Rio, stunned and blushing, didn't answer immediately. Rui pressed further, asking if it was Yuria or Airi. Rio panicked, denying it frantically and saying there was no way a bottom-tier introvert like him could be dating anyone. Rui analyzed his reaction sharply, noting his obvious panic, sudden fast talking, and shaking hands, and concluded confidently that he was lying. Rio thought she was like a detective with her sharp deduction skills. Rui asked him why he had lunch with Airi in the cafeteria yesterday and why he was lying to her. She pressed him to explain how they got close. Rio, with a panicked face, said he was just thanking Miyama because he ran into her at a store the other day and she let him have something he really wanted. Rui asked again if he was sure there was nothing between him and Airi, and Rio assured her there wasn't. Rui stared at him, then smiled and blushed slightly, saying she was relieved. Rio looked tense, wondering where this was coming from all of a sudden as Rui explained that she was always a perfectionist in academics and sports, and couldn't relax unless she met everyone's expectations perfectly. She said she was glad he didn't become Aries and felt relieved. Rio, stunned, asked what that was supposed to mean. Rui, standing close to him, said that back in middle school, he was the only boy who never confessed to her. Rio, surprised, asked if he was really the only one, and what about guys who already had girlfriends? Rui replied that they only chose someone else because she turned them down, comparing them to people settling for cheap cuts when they really wanted Chateaubriand. She said love was cruel, but Rio didn't even look at the meat at all, which set him apart from all the other predators. Rui asked him if he actually liked her too but was just too embarrassed to confess. As she moved her face close to his, Rio blushed and said he didn't feel that way. Rui pressed her breasts against his chest, asking him to say he liked her. Rio, caught off guard, tapped his back against the wall and tried to leave, but Rui told him they were going to play a game. She wouldn't move from that spot until he confessed. Rio shouted that it was ridiculous and tried to leave, but Rui teased that leaving a girl alone in the downpour was cruel. With her face close to his, Rio blushed and thought that even if it was Kuroki, being forced to confess like this felt wrong. He told her to stop messing with him, saying she wouldn't be happy hearing a confession forced out of him. Rui grabbed his fingers and said, while blushing, what if she told him she would be happy? Rio blushed and asked, "Huh?" Rui, holding his hand, said she meant it, and ever since that day, she had always, suddenly, Yuria appeared behind Rui, scolding her for flirting and telling her to pick someone else. Yuria asked why Rui was walking home with Rio, reminding her that Airi borrowed Rui's umbrella, so Rui and she agreed to go home together instead. Yuria said she told Rui to wait while she finished up committee work, so why was Rui under Izumiya's umbrella? Rio thought it was weird since what Kuroki said earlier didn't match this. Rui stared at Rio, and Yuria told her to come along. Rui agreed, and they left together. Rio sat on the ground, thinking he wasn't totally sure what just happened, but it seemed Rui's whole game got cancelled thanks to Ichinose. He decided to head home too. His phone beeped, and it was a message from Yuria apologizing for acting cold earlier, saying it was just for Rui's sake and calling him, "my bad." Ryo replied that she really didn't have to worry about that. Suddenly his phone beeped again with another message, and his face turned pale. Rui had messaged him, saying, since they got closer, she added him as a friend and told him to keep what happened earlier a secret from everyone. She warned him that if he spilled the beans, who knew what might happen. Rui then added, calling him by name, that she would make him fall for her, so he should just sit back and wait. Ryo, scared, thought that was the opposite of reassuring. It was terrifying. His phone turned off, and he sighed, thinking why three beautiful girls were going after an introverted otaku like him. He realized that just like that, he found himself unwillingly holding onto the secrets of three of his class's most popular girls, and his peaceful life was undoubtedly completely doomed all because of a single seat change. The scene shifted to Ryouta walking down the street, thinking aloud how a gloomy otaku like him spent his time after school, deciding that he would head over to Animates. As he walked into his house, he continued thinking that people would probably assume he just binged anime and games alone in his room. Inside his room, Ryouta sat down on his chair and muttered that he needed to think of a reply online. He looked at his phone and saw a notification saying he had received an image from Rui. Almost immediately, another message arrived from Yuria, telling him that he would come with her to see Chichi-kun's movie, right? Then another message popped up from Airi, excitedly saying that she had found a tadpole on her way back from work, and that it was gross cute. Once again, a notification appeared saying he had received an image from Rui. Ryouta hesitated, wondering whether his reply would sound kind of gross. Another message from Yuria followed, exclaiming that it was a rainbow. Then, yet another notification appeared, another image from Rui. Ryouta frowned, wondering what was going on with Rui today, and hoping it wasn't something crazy. When he finally opened the image, he froze. It was a photo of Rui wearing a tracksuit, her stomach exposed, taken on a highway. Rui asked what he thought, and whether she was cute. Ryouta blushed hard and reacted internally, thinking it was outrageous. Rui followed up by saying that he could save the photo if he wanted, that she wouldn't know how he used it, and that he shouldn't worry. Ryouta immediately decided he would mute Rui for a while. Even so, he couldn't believe that Rui, of all people, was actively trying to seduce him. Thinking back, he recalled something Rui had said on the way home and wondered what she meant by that day. He questioned whether something had happened back in junior high. Realizing Rui might know something about it, he decided he would ask her tomorrow. The next day, the scene shifted to the school rooftop. Ryouta called out to Tanaka, and she responded with an exaggerated laugh, greeting him. He told her not to open with that kind of laugh, and she flustered, apologizing and insisting it wasn't intentional. She then greeted him properly with a smile. Ryouta identified her in his thoughts as Tanaka Kanade, his one and only otaku friend from middle school. She commented on how cloudy it was, and he replied before suddenly snapping that he hadn't come there to pretend like they were some middle-aged married couple. She repeated the phrase in confusion. Ryouta insisted they went way back and begged her to believe what he was about to tell her. Blushing, she agreed to listen. He began explaining the truth, but Kanade immediately referred to that day. Ryouta panicked and shouted how a loner like him could possibly know anything about that, then awkwardly agreed with her. Kanade asked whether he truly had no idea and suggested that maybe he had helped someone without realizing it. Ryouta firmly stated that there were zero romantic vibes between Rui and himself, and that he had never saved a beautiful girl in his life. Kanade agreed, saying the idea of him saving Rui sounded absurd, then suddenly froze as something came to mind. With a tense expression, she recalled an incident from junior high. Back when she was in the broadcast club, during the graduation ceremony in their second year, there had been a serious problem. She remembered being told to prepare the next equipment and panicking because the farewell speech from the underclassmen was about to begin. Rui, who was supposed to give the speech, had accidentally left the manuscript in the student council room. Everyone had been tense, realizing that even Rui couldn't give the speech without the script, and that there was no time left. Kanade explained that backstage had been in complete chaos. Ryouta then remembered that moment clearly. That was when he had fallen asleep and slipped off his chair. Thinking he was sick, the staff had rushed him to the hospital. Kanade confirmed that was exactly it, explaining that the two events were connected. Because Ryota collapsed, the graduation ceremony was delayed for a few minutes. During that time, Rui slipped away, retrieved the farewell speech, and delivered it perfectly without a single mistake. Ryouta recalled seeing Rui smiling while looking at the empty chair. Realizing it, He understood that when Rui referred to that day, she was talking about the graduation ceremony. With a tense expression, he realized Rui believed he had helped her back then, and that she had been aware of him for 2 whole years. Shocked, he muttered in disbelief. Kaned hesitated before asking whether, in the end, he planned to confess to Rui. Ryouta immediately denied it. Kaned agreed enthusiastically, saying there was no way he could confess. Ryouta then turned the question back on her. Flustered and blushing, Kaned admitted she was all about 2D characters and was currently obsessed with a VTuber, asking if he was the same. Ryota confirmed it, smiling and saying that they really hadn't changed at all. Kaned puffed her cheeks, stood up abruptly, and announced she was heading back. Ryouta thanked her, then wondered whether he had said something that upset her. Later, Ryouta walked down the hallway, thinking that thanks to Kaned, he felt much better. He opened the classroom door and froze. Yuria was asking whether he had studied for the classical literature test. Airi was sitting on his desk, saying she hadn't studied at all, and asking to see Yuria's notes. Rui announced that she was all set. As Ryota walked toward his seat, he panicked internally, realizing Airi was sitting there. He silently begged her to notice him. Airi finally did, cheerfully apologizing and saying it was his seat. Yuria looked tense, while Rui remained expressionless. Ryouta scolded himself internally for letting Airi call him by his first name in front of everyone. Rui slowly repeated his name, then sharply questioned why Airi was calling him that. Airi panicked, covering her mouth and claiming she always called boys by their first names. Ryouta internally praised her quick save. Airi added that it was just a leftover habit from how she called her boyfriend. Yuria questioned her further, asking what her boyfriend's name was. Airi hesitated before blurting out a name that sounded suspiciously similar to Ryota's. Ryota internally protested the coincidence. Rui calmly noted how similar the names sounded, making Ryota panic internally. Yuria commented on how surprising it was that Airi revealed her boyfriend's name. Eventually, Yuria told Airi to return to her seat, and Airi quickly agreed. As Ryouta finally sat down, he sighed in relief. He reflected on how Rui's sharp intelligence and Airi's carelessness needed Yuria's presence to maintain balance. He then noticed his seat still felt warm and smelled nice from Airi, blissfully thinking about the healing power of Airi's presence until he felt a deadly stare from Rui. Airi leaned in and whispered into his ear not to forget their after-school date. The teacher announced the start of homeroom, and Ryouta realized his heart had skipped a beat. Yuria then muttered that he was getting way too full of himself and questioned why he was even close with Airi too. Ryouta grew tense, wondering whether this was actually his own fault. Looking forward, he thought about how he couldn't properly handle being surrounded by 3 beautiful girls and was now being stared at by all of them. He sighed, realizing things were going to be rough. The scene shifted to Kaned at her desk, blushing as she muttered that Ryouta was an idiot. After school, Ryouta started walking home, thinking it was time to head back. He overheard girls talking about stopping by Staba and remembered Airi mentioning a cafe. Suddenly, boys shouted in surprise. Airi came running toward him, her chest bouncing as she called his name. Ryouta froze, blushing, and called out to her. She stopped in front of him, red-faced and tense, and told him that he was the worst. Ryouta stood there, confused and nervous, wondering if Airi was mad. With a tense expression, he wondered if he had done something wrong, whether she had noticed him staring at her chest. Blushing, Airi continued, explaining that the reason was simple. He had forgotten their promise. She complained that he was so mean, and reminded him that they were supposed to go on a Steba date after school. Ryouta reacted in shock, blurting out that it was today. Airi confirmed it with a smile, reminding him that he had promised they would go to Steba together, and casually added that, of course, he would be paying. Ryouta thought bitterly that she had gotten a taste for it after the katsu curry, but also admitted to himself that cuteness was justice. Airi then hesitated and asked if he didn't want to go to Steba with her. Ryouta immediately bowed deeply and declared that it would be his greatest honor to accompany her. Airi burst out laughing, saying he sounded like an underling and teasing him about it. When he asked if it was really that strange, she suggested that maybe she should treat him this time, since he paid for her katsu curry before. Blushing hard, Ryouta insisted that he would pay. Airi grabbed his hand, thanked him cheerfully, and they walked off together. As they left, Ryouta thought to himself that this was actually his first time going to Steba. The scene shifted to Steba. Ryouta looked around nervously, thinking that everywhere he looked was full of extroverts. With a tense face, he carried drinks in both hands. Airi asked why he was so nervous, and he replied that this place was total enemy territory for an introvert like him. Airi tilted her head, then boldly declared that if she was an extrovert, then Ryouta was one too, since they were super close. Ryouta denied it flatly, insisting he was an introvert. Airi questioned why, then suggested they sit down. They took their seats, and Airi happily announced that it was time to dig in. She took a big sip of her drink and exclaimed that it was really good. Watching her, Ryouta wondered if it was truly that tasty. After taking a sip himself, he admitted that it was good. As people passed by chatting, Airi casually remarked that it looked like others thought they were dating. Ryouta sputtered in shock, repeating her words in disbelief. Airi admitted that she had never had a boyfriend before, so she wouldn't really know, but wondered if how close they were made them look like a couple. Ryouta thought that normally it wouldn't, but aloud admitted that she might have a point. He then realized aloud that Miyama had really never had a boyfriend. Airi froze, flustered, and quickly denied it, explaining that the boyfriend story was just a cover for her part-time job. Ryouta thought that she truly didn't want anyone to know about her job. He then mentioned how shocked he had been when she said the name Yuta in front of Rui that morning. Airi explained that at that moment, it was the only name that came to mind. Ryouta reacted in disbelief, but Airi brushed it off and declared that today wasn't about boyfriends at all. She explained that the real purpose was for Rui and Ryouta to get closer, calling that the good part. Ryouta immediately felt uneasy. Airi excitedly said she really wanted Rui to get along with Ryouta too, then started rummaging through her bag. Ryouta sighed as she pulled out her phone and explained that if Rui felt the same way, then communication with Ryouta was important. Smiling brightly, she revealed her plan, proudly calling it the Lime Communication Operation. Airi explained that it was easier to talk over Lime, and that even if Rui wasn't his girlfriend, getting closer was best. She declared step 1, exchanging Lime IDs. Ryouta reacted hesitantly, internally panicking. He looked at his phone and thought about the sexy selfie Rui had sent him. Airi then said she had already sent him Rui's ID and told him to message her right away. Ryouta thought desperately that Miyama was completely misunderstanding the situation. He reasoned internally that Rui only sent him selfies to maintain her perfect image and keep him interested, not because she liked him. He panicked at the thought of Miyama seeing those messages. Airi suddenly asked to see his phone and took it before he could stop her. Ryouta panicked, stammering in protest. Airi stared at the screen and asked what it was, realizing it was a photo Rui had sent him. She accused him of doing that every night and angrily called him gross, a creepy introverted otaku, telling him never to come near her again. Ryouta denied it desperately, thinking he had to avoid this outcome at all costs. He forced himself to think and quickly claimed that Rui was busy with club activities and that he would send proof of their chat later. He suggested doing it another time. Airi hesitated, then agreed, reasoning that Rui's tournament was coming up anyway. Ryouta thought he was safe. Still disappointed, Airi said she had wanted to see the two of them talk in real time. Ryouta then asked why she was always trying to pair him up with others, mentioning Yuria as well. Airi admitted that this time it was also because Rui seemed to like the idea. Ryouta was surprised. Airi pointed out that he was always by himself, and while he agreed, she said she thought hanging out with everyone was fun too. Smiling warmly, she said that since their seats were close, she wanted him to enjoy spending time with her and the others as well before quickly, adding that she was just kidding. Ryouta said nothing at first, then thought that Miyama was actually very kind, maybe too kind. He told her not to worry, and said that even if she didn't force herself to get along with him, just talking with her was fun. Airi looked surprised and asked if he really enjoyed getting along with her. He confirmed it, admitting it was fun, though he thought her idea of fun might be different. Airi nodded and suggested forgetting everything they talked about earlier. She told him he didn't need to force himself to message Rui online, and that she just wanted him to keep getting along with her. She asked him if he had fun when he was with her. Ryouta answered nervously that he did. Airi then declared that from now on, she would make his high school life fun. With a wink, she said that Ryouta would keep her secret, and she would make sure he had fun, calling it a win-win. Ryouta blushed, thinking that no matter how he looked at it, he was the only one benefiting. Airi added that since they were sharing secrets that made them special, so of course they should get along. She leaned in close, smiling, and Ryouta agreed awkwardly. He thought that Airi really didn't see this as romance at all, and admired her honesty, blushing as he thought that if he weren't such a gloomy otaku, he would fall for her. Airi suddenly asked to try his melon drink. Ryouta panicked, but before he could stop her, she took it and drank. He blushed hard, realizing it was an indirect kiss. Airi commented that the melon flavor was tasty and offered him her drink in return. Ryouta refused loudly, insisting it was gross because it was an indirect kiss. Airi teased him for being hung up on that and admitted she didn't really mind, saying she didn't even think twice about swapping drinks with the other two. She offered to switch instead if it bothered him. Ryouta desperately told her to leave it as it was. Airi laughed and handed the drink back. Ryouta stared at the straw, thinking about how it had touched Miyama's lips. As he was about to drink, Yuria suddenly appeared and asked what the two of them were doing. Ryouta froze. Airi greeted Yuria cheerfully. Ryouta panicked internally, wondering why Ichinose was there. Yuria explained she could see them swapping frappes from outside and confiscated the drink, declaring she would be the one to drink it. Ryouta watched in despair, thinking his first indirect kiss was gone. Yuria then demanded to know why they were at Stiba, and recalling how Airi called him by his first name that morning, asked if they were dating. Airi quickly denied it, explaining that Ryouta was just treating her as a thank you. Ryouta internally praised her save. Yuria repeated the explanation skeptically, then looked at Ryouta with a cute expression and asked if it was true. Ryouta blushed, confused by the pressure. Yuria then announced they were heading home. Airi agreed and waved to Ryouta, thanking him for everything. As they left, Ryouta sat back down, looking at the cafe and thinking that his very first after-school date with a girl had ended quickly, but that the cafe wasn't so bad. His phone rang. It was a message from Yuria, apologizing if Airi had pressured him and saying she would start calling him Ryouta too. He thought it was fine if she misunderstood, but wondered why even Ichinose was calling him by his first name. She followed up by telling him he could just call her Yuria. Ryouta blushed hard, panicking about what he was supposed to do the next time they met, especially since their next meeting was the movie on Sunday. He replied that he got it. The scene then shifted to Airi apologizing to Yuria for keeping her waiting because the bathroom was crowded. As they walked together, Airi excitedly talked about the new Steba flavor, peach, and matcha. Yuria commented that she wanted to try it too. Airi suggested she do so and asked about Sunday. Yuria flinched and said Sunday was a secret. Airi grew curious, and Yuria laughed. The scene shifted, and Ryouta was shown thinking that life was full of surprises. He checked his watch. It read 9:58 a.m. He wondered aloud whether his outfit looked weird, then thought about how strange it was that a gloomy loner like him was worrying about his clothes because he was meeting a girl for a date. From behind him, Yuria apologized and asked if she had kept him waiting. Ryouta was startled and thought that the girl he was meeting was Yuria greeted him properly, saying it was nice to meet him today. Ryouta thought about how unbelievable it was that he was out with Ichinose Yuria, the queen of the class cast. He looked at her and let out a small, awkward sound. In his thoughts, he noticed her casual clothes and her amazing thighs. While he was blushing and staring, Yuria suddenly grabbed his face with her hand. Ryouta gasped in surprise. While holding his face, Yuria told him he was staring too much and instructed him to look at her face instead of her thighs. Still blushing, Ryouta apologized. Yuria immediately asked if that was his kink. Ryouta answered honestly that it was. Yuria reacted instantly, calling him gross for answering so quickly. She then told him to keep that kind of thing just for her. Ryouta was internally shocked. Yuria warned him that if he tried that with another girl, he would lose his place. Blushing, Ryouta wondered if that meant it was okay as long as it was Ichinose. He nervously agreed. Yuria told him to hurry up and go see the movie with her, and called him by his name. They began walking, and Ryouta asked whether she had thought he was gross when she found out he was an otaku. Yuria replied that she had not and questioned why she would. She said that someone who looked like a flashy gyaru on the outside but was secretly the same as her usually felt like a trap. Ryouta thought about how Ichinose might have had a falling out with her friends in the past, and wondered if that was why she was so sensitive about it. Deciding to be honest, he told her that he really appreciated it. He said there were not many gyaru who could understand otaku culture, and that having an understanding gyaru like Ichinose made him very happy. Yuria smiled and let out a thoughtful sound while blushing. She then told him that more importantly, she had told him to call her Yuria, yet he was calling her Ichinose again. Ryouta apologized and tried calling her Yuria, adding Chan. Yuria immediately told him not to add Chan, calling it gross. Ryouta thought that she was a gyaru with a lot of demands. They were then shown walking toward the theater. Yuria looked excited and commented that being able to witness Milk Tan's breast milk on a giant screen like this was seriously moving. Nearby, a heavy-set man shouted that the seats were god tier. Ryouta and Yuria sat down, and Yuria admitted that it kind of made her nervous. Ryouta agreed. Yuria asked whether Ryouta normally wore mo t-shirts. He replied that he wore them every now and then, looking tense. Yuria then asked why he was not wearing one today, and added that he looked kind of cool, blushing as she said it. Ryouta stammered and internally panicked, thinking about how it was his first time going out with a girl and how he had dressed nicely because he was hyped. He wondered if that sounded gross. Yuria encouraged him, telling him there was nothing wrong with that. Ryouta explained that it was because he was walking next to Ichinose. Yuria asked what that was supposed to mean. Ryouta said he could not exactly walk next to a beauty like Ichinose while wearing a mo t-shirt, and that he thought it would be rude if his hair were messy as well. Yuria gulped and blushed hard. Ryouta worried that he might have seriously upset her and nervously called out to her. Yuria, shaking, asked if he really thought she was a beauty. Ryouta said that he did and expressed disbelief that she did not realize it herself. Yuria shouted that she was aware of it, then admitted that she had just been thinking that Ryouta felt the same way too. Ryouta smiled. Yuria immediately pointed out that he had called her Ichinose again. He apologized and corrected himself, awkwardly saying her name. Yuria smiled and said that was better. She then announced that the movie was starting. After the movie, the scene shifted to the escalators. Yuria exclaimed that the movie was amazing. Ryouta commented that the story was surprisingly deep and interesting. Yuria went on about how Milk-tan, despite being super lewd, ended up with massive boobs, and how the breast milk becoming a weapon was tear-jerking. Ryouta gave a small, stunned response. As they walked, Ryouta asked if she wanted to grab food next. Yuria apologized and said she was not hungry yet. She said that more than food, there was somewhere she wanted to go and implied that he understood. The scene shifted to a store. Yuria drooled slightly and called it actual heaven. Ryouta asked if it was her first time coming to animate. She admitted it was and said that coming alone had felt intimidating. Ryouta smiled to himself, thinking that he understood and that it must have been even harder for someone who looked like a gyaru. Yuria added that she was super relaxed today because Ryouta was with her. Ryouta blushed and asked if she really meant that. She confirmed it. Ryouta clenched his fist, thinking about how happy that made him. Yuria suddenly pointed something out, excitedly calling attention to a special corner for Jukyun. She bent forward and exclaimed that they even had milk-tan boob mouse pads. Ryouta thought that her backside was far more impressive. Yuria asked if she could take a moment to think about what to buy. Ryouta agreed and said he would check out the light novel section. Standing there, Ryouta thought about how he had already finished Grandma Vampire. Yuria noticed him and smiled. Ryouta asked if she had figured out what she was getting. Yuria asked him whether the milk-tan jumbo boob baby bottle or the boob mouse pad was better. Ryouta internally questioned what kind of choice that was and suggested the mouse pad would be more practical. Yuria replied that she still wanted to fully enjoy the breast milk splash feature. Ryouta thought she was something else. Yuria decided to get both. She walked out happily and commented that it was a pretty good haul. Ryouta thought about how she was completely an otaku inside a gyaru's body, and how seeing her carrying the store's blue bag felt oddly refreshing. Yuria then asked where to go next, and said there was one more place she wanted to visit. Ryouta questioned it, and she confirmed it with a grin. The scene shifted, and Ryouta recognized it as an arcade. Yuria asked him to play the crane game for her again. Ryouta agreed and asked if that was the figure she wanted, calling her Ichinose again. Yuria complained about him using her last name and said she preferred being called Yuria. Ryouta said he was not used to it and tried saying her name again. Yuria approved. She then reflected on how they had been total strangers the last time they were there. Yet only a few days later, they were back as friends. Ryouta agreed and said he had not thought he could talk so casually with her. Yuria laughed and said it was seriously funny. Blushing, Ryouta asked what had made her become an otaku. He admitted he was curious about why she had gotten into anime and thought about how he had not planned to pry into her past but wanted to take one small step in today. Yuria hesitated, then said it was the first time she was saying something like this. She explained that the blue bag held a memory from when she was in the lower grades of elementary school. In the flashback, she called out to a boy her age and invited him to play since he had been reading alone. When they parted, the boy thanked her and gave her a manga. She explained that the manga was the start of everything. It turned out to be from a boys' magazine and was kind of pervy, but cute, and it made her feel tingly. Before she knew it, she was completely hooked on manga. She added that she admired the gal heroine from that series and said that was the reason she was who she was today. Ryouta thought in disbelief that the #1 gal in school had been inspired by a manga. He commented that thanks to that manga, Both her gal side and otaku side were born. Yuria replied uncertainly. Ryouta said they owed that elementary school kid some thanks, and reflected on how he himself had used to sneak off to read sexy manga. He suddenly noticed that he could get the figure. Yuria reacted excitedly. Ryouta succeeded, and Yuria praised him. The scene shifted to the train station. Yuria said that today had been the best and thanked him. Ryouta replied that as long as she had fun, that was all that mattered. Yuria then told him quietly not to call her Yuria in front of Eri or Rui. Ryouta complained that she kept changing her mind. Yuria said she did not mind being called Ichinose instead, but warned him that if Eri and Rui misunderstood something, it would be his problem. Ryouta thought of Rui and bowed, asking to call her Ichinose. Yuria laughed and accepted it. She then said that things would get busy with culture festival preparations but asked him to hang out with her again. Ryouta agreed. She made him promise. The train announcement played, and Yuria said it was her stop. She said goodbye and left. After she walked away, Ryuta's legs shook. He sat down and admitted the date had been nerve-wracking, then smiled, thinking it had been simple but really fun. He reflected that this must be what a date felt like. Suddenly, the train announcement said the next station. Ryouta realized it was his stop and panicked. He rushed out and noticed a girl sitting on a bench, flipping through a book. As the doors closed, he recognized her. It was Rui. Ryouta froze in place and called out in shock, asking if it was Kuroki. Rui responded with a soft, "Oh my," laughing as she closed her book and stood up. Still stunned, Ryouta heard her remark that it was quite a coincidence. Addressing him as Ryouta-kun, he wondered why Kuroki was here at all. Rui stepped closer and commented that he was all dressed up, asking whether he had been on a date with someone. Ryouta hurriedly denied it aloud, while internally panicking and apologizing in his mind that it had actually been with Ichinose. Rui reacted with mild surprise and leaned in to sniff him, remarking that he kind of smelled like a girl. Ryouta backed away, blushing, and hastily claimed it had been a maid cafe. Rui echoed the words in curiosity, and Ryouta, flustered, insisted that otaku went to maid cafes on Sundays, declaring that they were creatures who craved maid service. Rui smiled and gently pitied him, calling him a poor Ryota-kun as she walked past. Embarrassed, Ryouta protested that if she pitied him, she should just leave an otaku like him alone, only for Rui to suddenly turn around and suggest they go on a date. Ryouta repeated the word date in disbelief. Rui clarified that she only meant walking around near the station. Ryouta questioned why she would go that far. Rui sat down on a nearby bench and asked whether he had been happy when he saw her sitting there. Ryouta hesitated, and after she stared at him in silence, he finally agreed that he did not know if it counted as a date, but since they were heading the same way home anyway, they might as well walk together. Rui laughed, and when Ryouta asked why, she brushed it off, saying it was nothing. As they walked side by side, Ryouta glanced at her from the corner of his eye and thought that Kuroki really was beautiful, someone of perfectionist nature, a little intense, yet still oddly captivating. Rui suddenly spotted a cat and called out to it, chasing after it while telling it to wait. Ryouta called after her. They soon found themselves in a park, where Rui patted the cat's head and sat down, calling it cute as she rubbed its belly. Ryouta asked if she liked cats. Rui hummed thoughtfully and, while hugging the cat, said that between him and a cat, she might choose the cat. Ryouta thought he had lost to a cat. Rui teased him for looking disappointed, but he denied it vehemently. She laughed, teasing him for getting jealous of a cat and calling him cute, even joking about rubbing his tummy too. Ryouta flatly refused, while privately thinking that if anything, he would rather see her belly button. Rui laughed again before growing serious, saying that to her, cats were special. Ryouta sat beside her and asked what she meant. Rui explained that she used to have one when she was little, but it had already passed away. Ryouta felt the mood suddenly grow heavy and muttered awkwardly. Rui continued, saying that thanks to that cat, something else special had entered her life, and that was why she loved cats and felt grateful to them. When Ryouta asked what that something else special was, the scene shifted into her memory. Rui recalled a day after taking her cat to the vet, when the cat suddenly jumped out of the car window. Panicking, she and her mother shouted for it, terrified it would be run over in the busy parking lot. Crying, Rui remembered seeing a boy appear in front of them with the cat perched on his shoulder and bags in both hands. Ryuta's narration described the impressive coordination of a cat on his shoulder while carrying groceries. Rui admitted, blushing, that to her, the boy had looked incredibly cool. She explained that he left right afterward, but his quiet demeanor made him seem even cooler and more admirable. She bent toward Ryouta and revealed that the boy was the other special one she had been talking about, asking if he felt better now. Ryouta thanked her for telling him and suggested they should get going. Rui reacted with mild surprise, prompting him to awkwardly try to explain himself. The scene shifted again as Ryouta realized they had arrived at Kuroki's place. Rui called out to him softly and warned that if he let her slip away, he might regret it. Blushing, Ryouta asked what she meant. Rui laughed, placed a hand on the door, and thanked him for walking her home, saying she had enjoyed their little walking date. As Ryouta blushed and thought about Kuroki, Rui winked and told him she would send more pictures later that day. Stunned, Ryouta watched her close the door and admitted to himself that while he did not dislike the idea, his inability to deny it made him wonder if he really was just a pervert after all. As he walked away, Rui looked at her phone and laughed quietly, remarking that the culture festival was just around the corner. The scene shifted to Monday morning at school. Ryouta sat at his desk reading when Airi repeatedly called his name and asked what he planned to vote for in the festival poll. Ryouta was confused at first, then remembered their class attraction. Airi enthusiastically proposed either a cafe or a play, saying a cafe would be fun. Ryouta stuttered at the idea, imagining Airi in a maid outfit welcoming customers home, and internally declared it a win. Yuria and Rui arrived, greeting Airi. Yuria asked what Airi and Izumiya had been talking about, and Airi replied that it was about the festival vote. Yuria sat down coolly, and Ryouta thought about how cold she seemed, despite the fact that they had been on a date yesterday. Rui laughed and leaned in close, asking Ryouta which one he would vote for, the cafe or the play. Both Airi and Yuria reacted in shock at Rui calling him Ryouta-kun, and Ryouta panicked internally, thinking she was about to cause another scene. Airi demanded to know why Rui was calling him Ryouta too, pointing out that they had not really talked before. Yuria calmly explained that since Airi called him Ryouta, she simply followed suit, adding that it would be confusing if everyone called him something different. Ryouta internally praised her logic. Rui then suggested that Yuria should call him Ryouta as well. Yuria hesitated, blushed, and awkwardly complied. Ryouta responded, thinking it was unfair since she had already been calling him that non-stop yesterday, but realized that now everyone called him Ryouta. When Yuria asked Rui what she planned to vote for, Rui said she was still deciding, but might choose the play. Ryouta repeated the words in his mind with unease. Yuria agreed, explaining that as a committee member, the play would be easier due to paperwork. Airi protested, urging Rui to choose the cafe so they could be maids together. Rui modestly claimed she was not as cute as the other two, prompting Yuria to insist that if Rui was not cute, then they would be mere background characters. Rui playfully lifted Yuria's chin, teasing her for complimenting her, while Yuria insisted she was just stating facts. Airi eventually agreed to choose the play to make things easier for Yuria. Ryouta decided he would probably vote for the play as well, reasoning that he would likely end up as a stagehand anyway. When the teacher announced the results that Class 2B would do a play, Ryouta acknowledged the outcome. As the teacher moved on to discuss the performance, Rui raised her hand and suggested Snow White, smiling at Ryouta. Seeing her expression, Ryouta felt a strong sense of dread, convinced that this suggestion spelled trouble. Rui stood up and suggested Snow White, adding that if they tried something original, preparation would become difficult, so a classic work would be best. Ryouta, his face tense, thought that Snow White only woke up if a handsome prince kissed her, and that it was basically the downfall of a spoiled, neat girl. He wondered why anyone would choose a story with a kiss scene. The boys in class reacted immediately, saying Snow White sounded great, calling it a brilliant and amazing idea, and agreeing enthusiastically because Kuroki had suggested it. Ryouta thought the class was far too easy to sway. Airi excitedly told Ryouta that if it was Snow White, they could be dwarves together. Ryouta internally doubted the existence of a dwarf like her. Rui then added that doing a normal play sounded boring and proposed a twist. The boys would play Snow White, and the girls would play the prince. Ryouta froze, thinking in shock that it was a gender-swapped Snow White. He observed the class and realized that while it was fine for the girls, it would be nothing but humiliation for the boys. Even though it was Rui's idea, he felt uneasy. Some students voiced approval, saying they liked it and that it sounded fun, agreeing simply because Kuroki had suggested it. Rui declared the decision settled. Ryouta realized the class had turned into unconditional approval bots and thought that this was the overwhelming force of someone absolute like Kuroki Ruri. Yuria instructed the class to split by gender and decide the cast roles, and the class agreed. Among the boys, one student commented that even for Kuroki, Having a boy play Snow White was rough, while another said cross-dressing was too much. Ryouta thought this was what peer pressure led to. Another student noted that Kuroki would not even play the prince since nationals were coming up and she would not have spare time, which Ryouta acknowledged as true. Someone else said that if it was not Kuroki, he would pass, while another admitted he would accept if Airi were the prince, but otherwise the risk was too high. At that point, the boys suggested Izumiya as Snow White. Ryouta reacted in shock. One student bowed and argued that Izumiya had the best grades among the guys and would be good at memorizing lines. Another urged him to accept. Ryouta protested that grades had nothing to do with this and internally panicked, telling himself to reject it because being the lead was far too much for him. He glanced at Rui, who smiled. Hesitating, he finally agreed, declaring that he would do it. The class erupted in excitement. Ryouta immediately regretted it, thinking he was an idiot and should have just said no. Yuria wrote his name on the board and announced that the boy's Snow White role would go to Izumiya-kun. Slumped at his desk, Ryouta wished someone would kill him already. Airi congratulated him enthusiastically, calling it amazing and saying being the lead was cool. Ryouta thought bitterly that they did not understand how he felt. He then realized that Airi's wording meant she was not the lead, which led to Yuria announcing that the girl's prince role would be played by her. Ryouta processed this and thought that it really was Yuria after all. Yuria, looking tense, added that Prince number 2 would be played by Rui, making it a double cast. Ryouta was shocked, unable to believe it. The boys reacted loudly, lamenting their bad predictions and calling Izumiya lucky. Ryouta wondered how things had ended up like this, and blamed it on Kuroki, assuming she was probably delighted that everything had gone according to plan until he noticed her dissatisfied expression. Shocked, he wondered if something had happened between Yuria and Rui during role selection, then dismissed it, telling himself it had nothing to do with him. Blushing, he insisted internally that he was not interested. The scene shifted to after school, where Airi apologized for the wait and expressed surprise that Ryouta had shown up at her workplace. He apologized for the sudden visit and explained he wanted to talk. Airi happily declared she was thrilled because she was getting an after-school date with him. Ryouta blushed, calling her name, and Airi suggested going to her usual spot, a place she had gone to since elementary school. He agreed. As they walked, Airi asked what he wanted to talk about. Ryouta explained that Ichinose and Kuroki had ended up double cast and asked what it was like when the roles were decided. Airi asked if he was curious, and he admitted he was, adding that she was the only female friend he could ask. Airi leaned in playfully, saying that being the only one made her happy. Ryouta blushed, thinking she was incredibly cute. Airi explained that when choosing the prince, everyone initially pushed for Rui, but Yuria stopped it, saying Rui had nationals coming up and offering to do it herself. Airi remarked that Yuria was kind. Ryouta agreed but questioned why Ichinose would not be chosen after that. Airi explained that Rui supporters and Yuria supporters split evenly, so they settled on double casting. Ryouta called it ridiculous, while Airi cheerfully promised to support Princess Ryouta as one of the dwarves. He thanked her. They arrived at Airi's favorite dagashi shop. Ryouta was shocked it was not a cafe like Starbucks. Airi explained that dagashi shops were cheap and let her eat lots of snacks, which she loved. Ryouta reflected that she must have gone through a lot. Airi said she had gone to dagashi shops since elementary school, but her old one closed, making this her new go-to. Ryouta asked if she came here after work, and she said she usually bought 10 umaya sticks. Ryouta joked internally that her body must be made of dagashi and imagined it as a national strategy. When Airi asked why he looked serious, he claimed he was thinking about politics, confusing her. Inside the shop, Ryouta remarked that it really was a dagashi shop and reminisced about biking to one as a kid. Spotting wafers, he called them nostalgic and said he used to collect the stickers. Airi agreed, saying wafers were memorable to her. She explained her family had been very poor, so she could only buy snacks rarely. She recalled watching another child win free ice cream while her stomach growled. The next day, a boy with a blue bag appeared and offered her a wafer, saying he only wanted the sticker. Airi remembered being incredibly happy and revealed she had been bullied for being poor, so no one was ever kind to her. She confessed that ever since that day, she had loved that boy and was not interested in other boys. Ryota acknowledged it quietly, thinking that boy was incredibly lucky. They sat on a bench and ate, with Airi happily enjoying her snack. Ryota spilled ramune on himself, and Airi laughed, handing him tissues and reminding him not to stay sticky. As she leaned close, Ryota thanked her and thought she was truly kind. but also believed she already had someone special and would never see him as a prince. Airi asked for a wafer, and Ryouta offered it, saying he only wanted the sticker. Airi froze and blushed, realizing the wording overlapped perfectly with her memory. She brushed it off and started eating, coughing, and Ryouta offered his ramyun. She drank it, revived, and called him her lifesaver, returning the bottle. Ryouta blushed. He realized the ramune was an indirect kiss opportunity, and, after checking around, drank it. Airi started to say something but stopped, flustered, and urged him to hurry so they could walk home together. Ryouta agreed. Later, Airi waved goodbye, and Ryouta thought she really was a good girl who was kind even to him. When he got home, his sister greeted him casually, announcing she had eaten his ice cream. Shocked and angry, he learned it was a limited edition, Häagen-Dazs. She then added that Tanaka was at their house. Ryouta froze, wondering why Tanaka was there. With a tense expression, Ryouta asked if Tanaka was at their house. His sister casually replied that she had been there until just a minute ago. She explained that Tanaka had said she had only happened to drop by, but that something seemed to have come up and suggested he asked her online. Ryouta responded that he already knew and went to his room. Shortly after, Kaned sent him a message asking if he wanted to talk on the phone for a bit. His phone buzzed again. Confused, he checked it and saw that it was from Rui. Her message said that so he could do his best in the play, she would send him a photo today as well. Attached was a picture. Ryouta reacted in shock, noticing her twin tails and exclaiming that it was Kuroki. Rui teased that this was the kind of thing he liked, wasn't it? Internally, he admitted that it was exactly his type. Another notification arrived from Kanade saying she could talk on the phone now. As he saved Rui's picture, he greeted Tanaka, saying it had been a long time. Kanade responded warmly that it had indeed been a long time. He asked whether she had come by his house earlier, and if she needed something. She hesitated and said she had heard a strange rumor about the cultural festival that Ryouta was playing Snow White, and that Ichinose and Kuroki were playing the prince. Ryouta thought that it was not a rumor at all, but true. Kanade said that even the premise sounded wrong, so it had to be a rumor, right? Ryouta admitted, with tension in his voice, that it was true, and that he was playing Snow White. Kanade asked if lately he had not been losing it in several ways. Pointing out that he was cross-dressing, Ryouta snapped that he could not help it, and that it had ended up being him who had to do it. Kanade calmly concluded that the extroverts must have bulldozed him into it. Ryouta thought that was exactly what one would expect from an introverted girl like her. She then asked whether he even properly understood Snow White's story. Ryouta insisted he did and thought he had the manga on his shelf. He searched his bookshelf, repeating the title to himself, only to realize that Volume 1 was missing. He dismissed it and said it did not matter. Kanade asked if he had found it. He said no. She then recommended a version titled Isekai Chart Snow White. You woke up the strongest me with a kiss, and then you annul our engagement. Ryouta accused her of simply wanting to evangelize it. Kanade returned to the topic, noting again that he was playing Snow White. He replied that he had no choice. She confirmed that the prince roles were Kuroki and Ichinose. When he affirmed that, she remarked that the two of them as princes was practically cheating, saying that unlike introverts like them, their very existence was a cheat. Ryouta partially agreed. She then asked how things were going lately with the three beauties. Ryouta casually replied that he had just been going on dates. Kanade was stunned and exclaimed that he was dating a lot, or rather, that dates were all he did. He confirmed that was pretty much the case. She commented that he had changed and joked that one day he would just lose his virginity at random and stop talking to an introvert like her. He asked why she sounded sulky and insisted that there was no way someone like him could suddenly lose his virginity. He explained seriously that even if he went on dates with those three, it would not lead to that kind of relationship. Kenneth seemed surprised. He clarified that each of them liked someone else, apparently the boy they had fallen for back in elementary school. Therefore, even if they hung out with him, it did not mean they would date him. Kanade sighed in relief. Ryouta wondered if she was that relieved, knowing he was still an introvert. He added that even hypothetically, if he could date one of them, he would not ditch her. She was his one and only otaku friend. Kanade blushed and said she had known he had not changed. Ryouta insisted he had changed, mentioning he had gone on a lovey-dovey date. Kanade teased that if he could not date any of the three, he would be a virgin for life. Ryouta admitted internally that he could not argue with that. She said that would be fine too. When he asked what she meant, she brushed it off and said she had cram school soon. He thanked her for everything and said that because they had known each other so long, he could speak freely with her, and it was easy. Kaned blushed intensely and said that was exactly it. She ended the call abruptly, leaving him confused about what she meant. A few days later at school, someone announced that the script was finished. Ryouta excitedly grabbed it. Airi rushed over and showed him that her dwarf character had many lines. He acknowledged it, thinking it was probably a strategy to attract her fans. Airi was thrilled about having many lines. Ryouta noticed that even the hunter and dwarfs were girls, and the princes were Yuria and Kuroki. He realized this effectively created a snow-white harem centered on him and felt briefly delighted. It was announced that Yuria would play the prince in the morning show and Rui in the afternoon show. Ryouta noted that since it was double cast, he would first act with Yuria and later with Kuroki. Secretly, he wished Snow White could be double cast as well. Yuria approached him and said that even though it was her first time doing theater, she would take it seriously and expected him to do the same. He nervously agreed. After she walked away, Rui commented that Yuria became intense in strange places. Rui approached him, touched his chest, and said they would become destined partners, so they should have lots of fun. Pressed against the board, he asked what she meant. Rui whispered that it was what it was they were Snow White and the prince. Guided by fate. He wondered what hidden meaning she was implying. Later, Ryouta reflected that although Rui's words bothered him, he had to do his best. Airi suggested everyone read the script together that day and noted Rui was off from track practice. Rui confirmed she was free. Airi suggested practicing at Rui's house. Rui glanced at Ryouta but declined, saying her house had a guest. Airi admitted her own house was small and messy. Yuria said her room was not an option either. Ryouta assumed it was because it was an otaku room. Airi then suggested that they go to a family restaurant. Yuria immediately objected, reminding her that the last time it had been filled with delinquents and extremely noisy. However, she added that thanks to Rui, everyone had gone quiet almost instantly. Airi excitedly praised Rui, saying she had silenced those delinquents in a moment and that it had been incredibly cool. Rui laughed modestly and replied that it had not been anything special and that such a thing was normal for her. He found himself wondering what she considered normal. Yuria then suggested Starbucks. Airi pointed out that it might be crowded and they might not find seats. Yuria asked what they were ultimately going to do and said that since Rui was free that day, she was fine with wherever Rui decided. Airi agreed and said she would also be fine with karaoke or the bowling alley. Yuria sighed and reminded them that they were supposed to be reading the script together, not playing around. Airi teasingly called her a goody two-shoes and, with a mischievous smile, added that for someone so proper, her underwear that day had been surprisingly flashy. Yuria immediately protested, flustered, and told Airi not to say strange things. Hearing that, he tensed up internally in shock, unable to process what he had just heard, and his imagination began running wild. Yuria grabbed Airi and scolded her again, while Airi apologized repeatedly. As he watched the two of them struggle, his thoughts spiraled into exaggerated fantasies, until Rui suddenly covered his eyes from behind. Startled, he turned and realized it was Rui, who was laughing softly. Rui then told Airi and Yuria to stop fighting and announced that she had decided where they should go. Yuria asked where, and Airi guessed karaoke. Rui calmly replied that it was not that. She placed her hand on his shoulder and said she wanted to go to Ryota's house. Both Airi and Yuria were stunned. He froze with a tense expression, realizing that perhaps the smile Rui had shown earlier had been part of a plan. Airi quickly said she also wanted to go to his place, and Yuria added that it might be a good place to relax. He felt the situation coming together far too smoothly. In his mind, he pictured all three of them sitting on his bed. The realization hit him all at once they were really coming to his house. Airi cheerfully declared that it was decided. The three girls stood in front of him, and Airi announced that they were coming over to Ryuta's place, leaving him completely stunned. Then the scene shifted to the four of them walking home together. Airi remarked that it felt kind of fresh walking home as a group of four, asking if it did not. Rui suggested they grab some snacks at the convenience store. Yuria agreed that if they were hanging out, it was a must. Airi then pointed out that Ryuta's place had games and other things, right? Ryouta wondered how this had even happened. He nervously clarified that they were coming over to read through the script and would go home once they were done, right? The three girls said nothing. He called out to them, but they remained silent. When they arrived in front of his house, Airi cheerfully announced that they were at Ryuta's house. Panicking, he asked them to wait just 3 minutes so he could tidy up his room. Yuria refused and told him to let them in already. Airi said she wanted to sit down. Yuria added that they would not mind if it was messy. Ryouta insisted that he minded. Yuria finally relented, saying they would wait 3 minutes for now. He thanked them awkwardly and rushed inside, thinking he had to do something in 3 minutes. He realized there was no time to put away his otaku merchandise. They already knew he was an otaku anyway. More importantly, he needed deodorizer spray. He hurriedly sprayed it, thinking that at least the smell would improve. Before he could finish, Airi opened the door, announcing that time was up and that 3 minutes had passed as she stepped inside. He tried to stop her, calling out to Miyama. She responded with a confused sound. Rui entered and observed that this was Ryota-kun's room. Airi exclaimed that there were tons of girl wall scrolls. Yuria remarked that she had been thinking this for a while, but Ryouta really was such an otaku. He internally shot back that she was one too. Trying to regain control, he declared that they should focus on the script. Airi suddenly commented that it smelled like deodorizer spray. He admitted he had used it earlier, figuring the room might stink. She leaned closer and sniffed him, saying she liked Ryuta's smell though. She then asked Yuria if Ryouta smelled nice. Yuria, blushing, admitted that she did not dislike his smell either. Embarrassed, he thanked them, thinking he did not understand this at all. Rui then suggested drinking the juice they had bought earlier and asked to borrow some cups. He agreed and said he would grab them from the kitchen. As he was about to leave, he hesitated, realizing that if he left, it would be just the three of them in his room. He wondered anxiously whether they would rummage through his things. Rui called his name, and he told them to just sit wherever and wait before heading out. Carrying plates and glasses, he reassured himself that it would probably be fine, as long as they did not look under the bed. He reflected that he had expected them to be far more put off, but surprisingly they were not. He had thought normal people like them would hate otaku. As he walked up the stairs, he wondered if that meant they had grown closer. Standing at the door, he thought that he never would have imagined having this kind of relationship with the three of them not long ago. When he returned and announced that he had brought the cups, he saw Yuria sitting on a chair using her phone, Airi sitting on the floor, greeting him excitedly, and Rui sitting on his bed thanking him for the cups. Relieved, he thought it was safe. Rui offered to pour the juice, and Yuria said she would help. Airi then called out to him, saying the game console would not turn on. He questioned why she was already playing games when they were supposed to read the script. She insisted she wanted to play. Sighing, he accepted this was how it would be. He noticed the console was not plugged in. Airi asked what kind of games he played. He answered that these days he mostly played RPGs. Then he suddenly realized something was wrong. Airi excitedly shouted that it had started, reading aloud the outrageous game title about a heart-pounding swimming meet full of ex-idols and wardrobe malfunctions, calling it a weird title. Yuria turned, blushing in shock, and Rui also looked at him. He panicked internally, realizing he had left an erotic Blu-ray inside. Now they would know his tastes in more ways than one. Yuria called his name accusingly. Rui calmly turned to Airi and suggested they prepare the snacks and asked Airi to get some ice. Airi agreed with a smile and left. Once Airi was gone, Rui, with an angry expression, said there was something she wanted to ask him. Both she and Yuria demanded to know exactly what that was. He apologized. Yuria shouted, asking why he was watching something so perverted and pointing out that normally people watch things like that online these days. Flustered, he admitted he preferred watching on a big TV screen. Yuria reacted in disbelief. Rui laughed lightly and said that was so like him. He asked why she was just accepting that. Rui replied that he was a teenage boy too, and that it was normal for him to watch that kind of stuff. Yuria reacted in shock. Yuria then questioned why Rui was acting like she was the only one who understood him, reminding her that they were just from the same middle school. Rui responded that it was because she and Ryouta-kun were, and trailed off suggestively while glancing at him. He thought she should stop hinting like that. Yuria demanded to know what that was supposed to mean and asked if they were secretly dating. He immediately denied it, insisting they had only gone to the same middle school. Yuria pointed out that Rui claimed to hate men, yet treated Ryouta differently. Rui countered that if Yuria was going to say that, then Yuria treated him differently too, adding that the two of them really clicked. Yuria insisted that was beside the point and that she was asking about Rui's relationship with him right now. He thought Kuroki's earlier comment had complicated everything, and that at this rate he would rather they keep teasing him about the Blu-ray. Blushing, he wondered if Kuroki had changed the subject on purpose. At that moment, Airi returned, announcing she had brought ice and urging them to hurry up and play the game. All three of them immediately declared they were not doing that. Confused, Airi went ahead and played anyway, only to lose repeatedly. She complained that Rui was too strong and demanded another round. Rui teased that if Airi lost again, maybe she could give her a shoulder rub. Meanwhile, Ryouta and Yuria sat on the bed. Yuria apologized for earlier, explaining she had to be strict given the situation. He assured her it was fine, adding with a self-deprecating smile that an introvert like him watching that kind of stuff only made him seem more like a creep. Yuria, blushing, confessed awkwardly that she had watched the same one before. He was stunned and thought that was fate. She immediately rejected that kind of fate. He remarked that she was not just about boob kyun, and that she watched that kind of stuff too. Flustered, she admitted girls watched that kind of content more than people thought, though maybe not someone like Airi, and added that perhaps she just had a pretty high sex drive. They both blushed intensely before she abruptly declared they should drop it, complaining that the sweat was making her bra see-through. He fixated on the phrase, see-through. She then asked why Volume 1 of Lucky Plus H was missing from his shelf. He replied that it had been a long time, and he did not remember, since he had bought it ages ago. She awkwardly noted it was from when they were in elementary school. He offered her Inago 1000% if she wanted something similar. She quickly declined, saying it had just caught her eye. Yuria suggested they should probably rejoin the others before Airi sulked. In the background, Airi complained about losing 20 times in a row and begged Rui to go easy. Rui laughed. Yuria told Airi not to get mad and scolded Rui for being immature. Airi protested that if Rui was being immature, did that make her a child? He silently agreed. Yuria awkwardly deflected. Airi then suggested they play something for 4 people, like a party game, and insisted Ryouta join too. Standing close to him, she asked if they seriously had no intention of reading the script. All 3 girls replied nope. He thought that was just like them. Airi suddenly asked Ryouta if he had a trash can, because she wanted to throw away the snack wrappers. He handed one to her, saying it was there. As she looked inside, she thanked him but then froze, staring at a blue bag. She muttered that it could not be what she thought. Ryouta asked what was wrong, calling her Miyama. Blushing, she quickly insisted it was nothing and claimed she had just thought you did not often see blue bags like that. He questioned whether that was so. Sitting down on his bed, he asked what they should play next. Airi excitedly said she wanted to play Life Sugoroku, noting that it looked like 4 people could play. Rui commented that, if she remembered correctly, the game even allowed players to marry each other. Both Airi and Yuria visibly reacted. Airi hesitantly asked if it had that kind of feature. Yuria, blushing, remarked that Rui sure seemed to know a lot. Ryouta sensed a strange atmosphere and wondered what this vibe was. Airi declared that she wanted to become super rich, so she would study a lot in the game. Yuria teased that it was the total opposite of real life. Airi asked if Yuria had said something, and Yuria quickly denied it, stating she was keeping it realistic and would polish her looks like crazy. She then asked Rui what she would choose. Rui calmly replied that she would probably go with talent. Ryouta thought that answer was so, like Kuroki. As the game entered the adult phase, Airi complained loudly that she did not have any money. Ryouta realized this was the adult stage, and remembered there was a marriage option. He wondered what the 3 of them were planning to do. Rui hummed thoughtfully, and announced that she would propose to Ryouta-kun, since they were playing princess and prince in the play anyway. Ryouta shouted in shock. Yuria, blushing, declared that she was a prince too, so she would choose Ryouta. He protested weakly. Airi immediately followed, announcing that she would propose to him as well. Overwhelmed, he stammered at the 3 of them. Rui said that if he married her, he would never have to work again because she would take care of him. Airi objected that it was not fair and promised that if he married her, she would cook delicious food for him every day. Yuria shyly added that she would do the housework properly, and that she wanted kids too. Ryouta was stunned, thinking this had turned into a full appeal showdown. Marriage was supposed to be in-game only. Still, he could not help imagining what it would be like to marry each of them. If it were Kuroki, he pictured her gently teasing him for staying home playing games without working, yet saying it was enough just to have him there. No matter how he imagined it, she seemed like the type who would support him for life. She was perfect, and married life would probably be amazing. Yet she was also mysterious, and he felt that if he let his guard down, she might dominate him completely. Then he imagined Miyama welcoming him home brightly. He thought Miyama was easy to read, and considering her situation, it made him want to be the one supporting her instead. He even imagined letting her eat as much as she wanted, thinking that someday she might become unbelievably huge. Suddenly, Yuria pinched his cheek and accused him of having pervy eyes. He cried out in pain. His thoughts shifted again. If he married Yuria, perhaps she would offer him ear cleaning or suggest playing games together. He reflected that they were a great match in both hobbies and personality, and her alluring thighs alone were worth 1,000,000 points. His only concern was that if they got married, she might stop being a gyaru. Then she would simply become a perfect, ridiculously gorgeous wife. When he snapped out of his thoughts, he realized all three girls were staring at him. As he opened his eyes fully, he saw their faces were extremely close. Startled, he asked what was going on. Yuria leaned in and asked him who he was picking out of them. Airi urged him to hurry up and choose already. Rui laughed softly and said there was no need to even think about it. Ryouta panicked internally, thinking this was the ultimate choice. It was just a game, but no matter who he chose, the other two would likely give him nasty looks. Still, if he wanted to keep the game going, he had to choose. Airi pressed him to hurry. He began hesitantly, saying that he would. At that exact moment, Kaned burst through the door, apologizing for interrupting. She froze mid-sentence, stammering incoherently as she saw him surrounded by all three girls. Blushing furiously, she exclaimed that Ryouta-kun was really doing something inappropriate with all four of them. He immediately denied it. She wailed that he had changed. He shouted back that he absolutely had not. Then the scene continued with Ryouta, still tense, demanding to know what Kanade meant by really doing it. Kanade explained that she had run into his older sister earlier, who had told her not to ask anything and to just use a key and go into his place. Realizing this, Ryouta internally cursed his sister for causing the misunderstanding. From behind, Airi spoke up, prompting Kanade to turn around. Airi recognized her as Tanaka-san from the same class the previous year. Yuria added that she was the girl who was always reading books. Rui then questioned why Kanade was casually entering Ryuta's house. Panicking, Kanade nervously explained that, as an introverted girl, sharing the same space as bright and beautiful girls like them made her feel as though she did not even deserve to breathe the same air. Ryouta thought she was overreacting, but then wondered if Kanade had some kind of connection with the three girls. Concluding that he had no choice, he decided to leave things to her. Grabbing Kanade by the shoulder, he told her to play the game for him. Confused, she questioned him, but he immediately ran off, saying he was going to the bathroom. Airi scolded him for running away, and Yuria called after him not to escape. Inside the bathroom, Ryouta thought that although he had left it to Kanade, there was still a chance they might wait for him and not choose. As he returned toward the room, he resolved that if that happened, he would just have to face it. However, when he entered and apologized for keeping them waiting, he was met with a shocking sight. Kanade was lying on Airi's lap, playfully asking her to feed her a snack while saying "AA." Airi, slightly exasperated, went along with it. Ryouta realized that Kanade had chosen Miyama in his place, and even so, he could not help but think it looked far too enviable and wished he could switch places with her. Kanade laughed, but Yuria, with a tense expression, remarked that this person was seriously gross. Rui also sternly told Ryouta to kick Kanade out immediately. He realized they were completely put off by her behavior. The game continued, and Yuria complained in disbelief about ending up as a comedian. Airi happily announced that she had got third place and become a model. Rui teased Yuria, suggesting she should try becoming a comedian. Yuria snapped back, telling her to be quiet, pointing out that just because Rui had become an inventor did not mean anything, and reminding Airi that she had wanted to become rich. Airi casually replied that she had realized love mattered more than money in this world, addressing Kanade. She grabbed Kanade, who enthusiastically declared that she would shower Airi with as much money as she wanted. Yuria internally thought that was simply gross. Airi then admitted that, honestly, instead of Kanade, she had wanted Ryouta himself to make the choice. Kanade was shocked. Ryouta was caught off guard, and Airi explained that she wanted to know who he would choose as his bride. As he hesitated, Yuria demanded to know if he had some kind of problem with them. He quickly denied it and explained that choosing just one out of three top-tier beauties like them was too much for any normal guy. All three girls blushed deeply. Kanade gasped and teasingly remarked that the three of them were all so easy. Immediately, Yuria told her to shut up, Rui told her to be quiet, and Airi scolded her for being too loud. Startled by the backlash, Kanade panicked and pleaded with Airi to call her Kanade-chan instead. Airi bluntly stated that it was already over, leaving Kanade in despair. Rui then checked the time on her phone and noted it was close to 6 p.m., suggesting that it was time for everyone to head home. Airi protested, saying she wanted to have a sleepover like this. Ryouta immediately objected. Yuria warned Airi that if she did that, Ryouta might try something perverted. Embarrassed, he thought she should not talk about him like he was some kind of repeat offender. Yuria then agreed it was time to go home, and Ryouta awkwardly agreed. At the door, as Airi and Yuria were leaving, he reminded them that starting the next day, they would begin preparing for the school festival, and that he needed to read through the script. Yuria casually responded that she got it, waving with a smile. Airi also smiled and said goodbye before leaving. Once they were gone, Ryouta turned back toward his room, sighing that it had been an unbelievably hectic after-school time, and that he would go back and read the script. Just then, Rui called out to him from behind. Startled, he turned as she explained she had left something in his room and asked if she could go up. He hesitantly agreed but questioned if that was really true. She teasingly asked if he was doubting her. He denied it but internally suspected she had a reason for suggesting they hang out in his room, wondering if she had been aiming to get him alone. Rui laughed and playfully suggested that perhaps he was expecting something, that she had left something behind on purpose to be alone with him and planned to do something strange. Flustered, he reacted, but she brushed it off, saying she would simply grab what she forgot and head home. As she walked ahead of him, he wondered when she had noticed his thoughts. Pausing on the stairs, she glanced back and asked if he had enjoyed today. As he followed her upstairs, he replied that he had had a decent time, then asked if coming to his room had not bothered her, suggesting she might be forcing herself for the sake of her perfection. Opening the door, she smiled and told him he still did not get it. Confused, he repeated her words. She took out her phone and clarified that while she had said she needed him for the sake of her own perfection, what she really meant was that she needed him so she could continue being perfect. He was left confused, thinking he had no idea what that meant. She remarked that she had expected him to figure it out quickly, since he was surprisingly smart, but apparently not. Near the door, she laughed softly and said that side of him was interesting too. She then added that once the school festival was over, she would explain what it truly meant and encouraged him to do his best in the school festival play, calling him Princess. He awkwardly agreed, and she left. The scene then shifted to Ryota sitting in his room, frustrated that her cryptic words were bothering him so much that he could not focus on the script. Time passed as they continued practicing until finally the day of the school festival arrived. That morning, while eating, Ryouta continued reading the script and asked his sister to finish the rest of his breakfast for him. She agreed but asked if he had no appetite. He admitted he was too nervous to eat. As he left the house, he thought that for an introvert like him, acting in front of people was too much pressure. But there was no point regretting it now. He sighed and headed out. Outside, he saw Rui and Yuria waiting. Rui greeted him, and Yuria noted that Airi had overslept. He awkwardly greeted them back. Yuria pointed out that he seemed a little late, and he explained it had taken him a while to get ready. Yuria questioned why, since there were no textbooks to pack on a festival day. Rui lightly teased that, as a boy, he probably had all sorts of things going on. Ryouta internally panicked, thinking she had the wrong idea. Rui then asked if he noticed anything different about her today. Confused, he asked what she meant. She leaned in close, making him flustered, and pointed out her lips, saying she had put something on them. He observed they looked slightly red. Smiling, she grabbed his shoulder and revealed that since they had a kissing scene that day, she had worn her favorite lip gloss. Shocked, he shouted in disbelief, asking what she was saying. Yuria, also blushing, asked if Rui was actually planning to kiss him for real. Rui laughed and said she was just joking, that the kiss would only be pretend, just like in rehearsal, and the lip gloss was just for a change of pace. She teased Yuria for getting worked up. Yuria, slightly embarrassed, turned it back on Ryouta, asking if he had seemed a little happy just now. He denied it. Rui teased him further, asking if he had wanted her to steal his first kiss. He firmly rejected that idea. As they walked, Ryouta thought that, technically, his indirect first kiss had already been with Miyama. Yuria then admitted she was genuinely looking forward to the play, saying her Snow White had been pretty cute in rehearsal. Rui hugged his arm and agreed, suggesting they take a picture together once he was in costume. Yuria joined in, suggesting they take a video too. Flustered, he refused and urged them to hurry to school instead. They agreed, and the three of them walked on together. Arriving at the school, they saw a board announcing the festival at Prefectural Natsuhama Central High School. Ryouta commented that it finally felt like a festival and wondered if their class had started preparing. Yuria replied that they probably had, reminding them that their play was second in the program and they needed to hurry. Inside Class 2B, students were actively preparing, discussing costume adjustments and stage timing. Seeing this, Ryouta felt his nerves spike again. Just then, Airi arrived, calling out to them. Yuria scolded her for being late on such an important day. Airi apologized and told Ryota that they wanted Dwarf Airi and Snow White Ryota to go around promoting the show, handing him his costume. He agreed, and Airi excitedly grabbed his hand, telling him it was time to get changed. He protested as she dragged him along. The scene shifted to the boys' washroom, where Ryouta struggled with his cross-dressing outfit, muttering that it felt impossible. Looking at himself in the mirror, he admitted that, being slim, he might actually look somewhat like a girl. Someone called out, asking if he was done changing, and he replied that he was coming out. Later, Airi wondered if enough people would come despite all their promotion. He reassured her it would be fine, though internally he believed people would come to see the three beauties, while he would just be a laughingstock and drag. He questioned what it even meant to have a lead role. Airi asked if he was nervous, noting he would be on stage soon. He admitted he was a little nervous, but said no one would really be watching him anyway. Airi looked stunned and then admitted she was nervous too. She grabbed his hand and guided it to her chest, blushing, telling him to feel how fast her heart was beating. He was overwhelmed by the softness and the moment. She confessed that she normally did not get nervous, but thinking about not wanting to mess up in front of him had made her anxious. He responded that even if she did mess up, he would not make fun of her. She agreed but said she had realized something when she visited his house the other day. Before she could finish, a male classmate called them, saying it was time for their class to gather. Ryouta responded that they were coming and asked her what she had been about to say. Flustered, Airi dismissed it, claiming it was nothing, then blushingly declared that going to his house had made her feel like she could not lose to him before running off. Two male classmates then teased Ryouta, calling him cute and saying they wanted to pat his head. Embarrassed, he told them to stop. Just then, Yuria called his name and suddenly hugged him. The classmates reacted in surprise. Blushing, Yuria asked how she looked. Ryouta sincerely told her she looked 100 times cooler than him and that they were on completely different levels, making him feel like he had already lost. Relieved, she thanked him and, slightly shy, told him he looked cute too with the red ribbon. Then, with a playful smile, she extended her hand and, in a princely manner, asked Snow White if she could have the honor of accompanying her to the stage. Completely flustered, he thought she looked incredibly cool in menswear and accepted. The scene shifted to the auditorium as another class's play was announced. Ryouta sat reading his script, realizing their turn was next. His nerves intensified as his confidence began to fade. Rui approached from behind, laughing softly, and remarked that he looked very nervous. He noticed how cool she looked in menswear as well. He warned her not to make fun of him if he messed up. She responded that she did not seem like the type to tease him to death and sat beside him. She reassured him that once the play started, it would be over quickly, but asked if he was still nervous. He admitted he was. She teased that she thought he had more guts than this, pointing out that he could talk to them normally. He blushed, thinking that was only because he knew her secret. She encouraged him to be more confident and then, blushing slightly, proposed that if the first performance went well, then for the second show in the afternoon, she might give him a real kiss. Then the scene continued with Rui leaning closer and saying that if the first show went well, she would give him a real kiss in the afternoon performance. Ryouta, completely flustered, reacted by asking what she meant and telling her not to be ridiculous, adding that messing with an introvert at a time like that was too much. At that moment, a girl called out for Class 2B to get ready. Ryouta panicked, realizing it was already time, and tried to call out to Rui. Rui simply laughed, stood up from her chair, and admitted that she had just been joking earlier. She explained that she thought it might help take his mind off things a little. Confused, he questioned what that was even supposed to be. However, he admitted internally that Rui's teasing had actually calmed him down slightly. He then thanked her, and she replied that he was welcome. The stage announcer introduced Class 2B's performance, Snow White, as the audience applauded. Ryouta stood on stage as the narration began, describing Snow White living in a castle in a certain kingdom and being known for her beautiful fair skin. The audience murmured, and Ryota thought they could stare all they wanted. He acknowledged that his acting was not great and his voice was not very loud, but he resolved to pull it off, finish quickly, and return to his peaceful life. He delivered his line about his days in the castle being the same and wanting to meet his prince someday, all while blushing and thinking how incredibly embarrassing it was. However, he realized Rui had been right once it started. He was not that nervous. The king's line followed, asking who was the fairest in the world. Some girls in the audience commented that the play was gender-swapped and found it hilarious. Another agreed. Then came the line telling Snow White to flee to the forest. Airi entered energetically, commenting on Snow White's refined face and inviting him to stay at the dwarf's house. Ryouta internally noted that she was still a complete mess, even during the actual performance. She continued acting, inviting him inside and feeding him while telling him to open wide. Other girls added lines about rubbing his shoulders and cleaning his ears, which made him blush intensely as he wondered how it had turned into a harem. The narration continued, explaining that Snow White was enjoying a carefree life in the dwarf's house until one day, the witch appeared and offered him an apple. Ryouta thought he would just eat it and lie down, but then noticed Yuria staring at him and was momentarily confused. The witch prompted him again, and he responded. She handed him the apple, and after he took a bite, it fell as he collapsed to the ground. The witch laughed and declared Snow White dead, claiming to be the most beautiful. Lying there, Ryouta thought about how the mat smelt like sweat and urged Yuria internally to hurry. Yuria then entered, saying she had let her horse wander and ended up in the forest, surprised to find a house there. The audience reacted loudly, clearly excited by her appearance. Ryouta noted how much the girls in the audience adored her. Yuria observed that Snow White was not breathing and declared she would perform artificial respiration. Ryouta slightly opened his eyes and thought about how nice she smelt. She told him softly to keep his eyes closed, and he complied while blushing, thinking about how close her face was. She admitted that she had always thought she had a decent amount of nerve, but the moment she looked at his face, she realized she could not pull off something sneaky. Confused, he wondered what she meant. Instead of kissing him properly, she leaned in and kissed his cheek. The audience erupted in excitement. Startled, he pulled back, holding his cheek, realizing what had just happened. Seeing her, he thought in shock that it was a kiss. Yuria, touching her lips, asked if he had awakened, staying in character. He, still blushing, thought about how soft her lips had been and responded awkwardly. He thanked the prince, saying her kiss had awakened him, while internally admitting he could not think about anything but her lips. He then continued his line, swearing to love her for the rest of his life. The audience applauded as the announcer declared the end of the morning performance. Rui stood nearby while a girl commented on how cool she had looked. A boy announced that there would be free time until the afternoon show, and another student responded enthusiastically. The scene shifted to Ryouta in the washroom, sighing that he just had to survive one more round. As he stepped out, Airi called out to him, and Rui welcomed him back, praising his performance. Airi excitedly said he had been amazing. He awkwardly thanked them while thinking that, for him, it was just another addition to his personal embarrassment. He then asked where Yuria was. Airi explained that she was doing a photo shoot with her fans behind the gym, and that there had been too many people for her to join. Ryouta thought that was insane. Airi suggested going to the maid cafe run by Kaned's class. Ryouta said he needed to put his costume away first, and asked them to go ahead. Airi agreed, and Rui told him to join them soon. They walked away, Airi waving, and he waved back before leaning against a wall, wondering if Yuria had finished yet. Suddenly, two girls approached him, recognizing him as Snow White. They excitedly asked to take a picture. Embarrassed, he tried to refuse while covering his face, thinking that if those pictures spread online, he would be in serious trouble. Yuria suddenly intervened, telling them firmly that it was not happening and that Ryouta was not okay with having his picture taken. She added that they could post as many pictures of her as they wanted, but Ryouta was shy, so they should go easy on him. The girls apologized and left. Afterward, Yuria commented that he had looked like he was enjoying the attention. He admitted that maybe he had been, just a little. She sighed, saying that was exactly what was wrong with him, but then added that he had actually looked pretty good on stage and had settled into the role, allowing her to watch without stress. She also admitted she had been nervous, mentioning that people had said her eyes looked scary right before she went on stage. Then, blushing, she brought up the kiss from earlier. She quickly clarified that it had basically been a reward, since he had been trying hard but seemed nervous, so she decided to tease him a little. Relieved, he said that was all it was. She confirmed it was nothing strange. However, she leaned in again and asked if he had been happy about it. Blushing deeply, he admitted honestly that since he had never been kissed before, it had excited him. Shocked and embarrassed, she immediately declared she would never kiss him again. Trying to move past it, he suggested they go check out the maid cafe run by Tanaka's class, mentioning that the others were already there. She hesitated, saying that maid outfits brought back bad memories. When he asked why, She explained that the previous year she had worn a maid outfit for a cosplay cafe, but the skirt had been quite short. Blushing, she admitted her thighs were somewhat thick. He internally thought they were far more than just somewhat. She continued, explaining that although she had already bought it, she wore it anyway, but it made her thighs stand out too much. The teacher said it was too suggestive, so she was the only one made to work in a plain tracksuit, which she described as the worst experience. Awkwardly, he asked if there was any chance she could wear that maid outfit now. She immediately rejected the idea with a sharp expression. He apologized. As they walked, she admitted she understood how he felt and added that if he came over to her place sometime, she could wear it for him then. Without hesitation, he said he would go. She instantly reacted, calling his response gross. The scene then shifted to before the afternoon performance. Ryouta stood in the washroom again, sighing and reminding himself that he only had one more performance left. He admitted internally that he was starting to get used to cross-dressing. As he stepped out, Rui noticed him and commented that he looked like Snow White. He was once again struck by how cool she looked in menswear. She teased him for being too shocked, and he admitted she looked too cool not to be surprised. He reflected that her athletic build made her look natural even dressed as a boy, reinforcing her image as a perfect all-rounder. She extended her hand and told him it was time to go. They moved to the auditorium, where Yuria commented on how large the audience was, even noting there was a standing crowd. Ryouta remarked that the Kuroki effect was insane and felt the pressure intensify. Yuria reassured him, patting his back and telling him that the morning show had gone well, so he just needed to endure one more time. He agreed nervously. The announcer introduced their gender-swapped Snow White, and the audience applauded again. As the narration began, Ryouta delivered his lines more smoothly, realizing he had gotten used to it compared to earlier. The story progressed, with Snow White being brought into the forest and told to flee. Airi entered again, but this time her costume malfunctioned as a button on her chest came undone and fell. She froze briefly, blushing, while the audience murmured. Despite that, she continued acting, holding her clothes while delivering her lines and inviting Snow White to the dwarf's house. Ryouta was shocked but thought she had somehow managed to pull it off. She resumed feeding him, and another girl offered to rub his shoulders. Ryouta tried to pretend he had not seen anything. Airi leaned close and whispered in his ear not to stare too much, which only made him more conscious of it. She then continued her line, saying they were heading to work and asking him to watch the house. The witch appeared again, asking for help and offering the apple. Ryouta collapsed once more as the witch declared Snow White dead and praised her poison apple. He realized the lines had changed slightly from the first performance. Hearing footsteps, he understood that Rui was about to enter. Rui entered confidently, delivering her lines about wandering into the forest. The audience reacted loudly. Even while lying down, Ryouta was impressed, recognizing her performance as something refined through constant pursuit of perfection. She noticed Snow White and remarked on finding a beautiful woman there. He internally prepared himself as she approached. She observed that Snow White was not breathing and declared she would perform artificial respiration. As she leaned closer, his heart raced. Seeing her face so close, he wondered if she was actually going to do it this time or if she was just pretending, blushing intensely as the moment built.
By the way, if you enjoyed the video, maybe consider liking and subscribing? Pretty please?